Welcome in. This is Last Call, a new look Last Call. That is, my name is Kaden Colford, and beside me today is Jacob Walton. Usually that'll be Nathaniel Finch, but Nathaniel Finch is off doing Nathaniel Finch things in Las Vegas. We know he's having a blast, but Jacob Walton, you're pretty active here at the university, gained some popularity in the last couple weeks, to say the least. What is your role here at the University of Indianapolis?
So I work in the sports information office. I was actually an undergrad in this very communication department just a year ago, but now I'm over in the communications office and the sports information office over at the UINDY Athletics Land. Yeah, I'm a GA for sports information. Roundabout way of saying that.
You're also a very, very good photographer, right? We actually see your pictures right here. And if you want to say you've had a little rise to fame, you've been on a couple prestigious platforms. Can you name a couple of those for us?
So the photos, obviously, everybody knows the Brady Ware-a-thon, as I'm calling it now. He was on pretty much anything and anything sports. I've had my photos alongside him on ESPN, SportsCenter. Pat McAfee show is probably one of the more recent ones. The Athletic posted photos of mine. MLB.com, which was one of the first ones, which was when I kind of realized, man, this is going to be something special, when they reached out and I got photos to them. And a slew of other platforms, from the College Baseball Hall of Fame to collegebaseball.com to a bunch of other websites. Anybody that's wanted photos of Brady, they've gotten them from me.
And exactly like you said, this is coming after Brady Ware's historic day at UINDY. And we've covered that on Last Call. We've had Brady on. We've talked to him about this, like we said, historic outing. He's been mentioned with Babe Ruth, with Shohei Ohtani. And you know, when you're being mentioned with those names, that's pretty solid company. But we know what that's done for him and his career. What do you think the impact has been on the university as a whole?
We've won 4 national championships here. We won one just a couple months ago. A year before that, we won in women's lacrosse, men's swim and dive. We've won national championships here. We have student athletes that are continuously doing some of the most amazing things at the Division II level. And this is by far the coolest and most media attention we've ever gotten. And that's one of the coolest things that I've been a part of. I've been here. I was one of the main photographers for the women's lacrosse national championship. I saw the first ever men's national championship in swim and dive. I know you guys talked about that briefly.
Yeah.
And this has been leagues above all that, from the Pat McAfee show reaching out, Wish TV coming to practice, and talking with Brady, Fox 59, the Indy Star. I could list the thousands of different people that have talked about it, but it's been major for our athletics department and putting our name on the map. And you can look at it just through our analytics. It's funny, I talked with people, we looked at our Twitter analytics, and it's here, and then it's in the ceiling, because of the numbers that these are just simple tweets have done. So it's been really cool, and to be kind of a large focus of that, I want to say Brady's the one that did it. Like, I don't want to take any type of credit, but being able to get that word out and talk to some of these people is awesome, and having my photos alongside it is something I never thought I'd be able to say is, oh, my photos have been in MLB.com.
And yeah, you were at Victory Field, right, when he went out there to throw the first pitch. Your pictures were up on the scoreboard. There's no need to be humble for this guy. Pat McAfee, you mentioned the Pat McAfee show too. Brady Ware was on there, and there was actually some incentives going on with Pat, right? We know we got into some.
So the Pat McAfee show, they're the Pat McAfee show. Pat McAfee, there's no one like him in the world. Like, he took the talking head realm where the Last Call is even a side product of that. He took that and took it to a totally different level, going to Barstool and now doing his own thing, and seeing Brady Ware on that. Like, the comments on the YouTube video that he posts on his channel, just it's amazing to see. But you talk about the incentives, and it's funny, the day after, because the game happened during like the third game of a 4-game set, he still played that next day. And Pat McAfee issued a challenge that, if you do a double, you get a double, you hit for the cycle again, we're going to give you $30,000, $15,000. And I know a fancy institution near IUPUI immediately saw red marks going off in their heads saying, hey, you can't just be giving this kid money based on performance. So the tweet that we sent out, that was my boss's handiwork, that, hey, we can't accept this. The NCAA wouldn't be incredibly happy. Of course, paraphrasing. But the whole thing, we don't know how it's going to resolve, but it's been cool to see the connection with Pat McAfee and how he's kind of rallied behind a Southside kid, a kid that's just fresh to UIndy. He's a grad transfer from St. Catherine, was a heck of a ball player at NAIA St. Catherine, I've talked with him about his days in NAIA, but just to see Pat McAfee and the whole Indianapolis community rally around Ware and what he's done and the UIndy baseball team. It's been awesome.
About that baseball team, they've been up and down. They started off red hot. Can you give us a little breakdown of how their season's gone and what the culture's like with that squad right now?
Okay, so one thing about, you say up and down.
Yeah.
They were 11-0 to start the season, a mark that was better than a team ever had started for UIndy baseball since, I believe it was 1999, a team that Al Reddy, the next year our current head coach, was going to be on. So the year before Al Reddy was our starting catcher, they had set that record. And there's a record set before that, but this was showing how great they were starting, sweeping a very good Grand Valley State squad, which for those that are UIndy baseball and UIndy athletics fans, sweeping Grand Valley is always fun. Beating Grand Valley is always fun. So that was when we kind of realized, man, this team is good. Davenport, another good GLIAC school we beat. We, of course, set that single game runs record against Notre Dame College, and this team can hit. Then they run into Maryville, and Maryville's a very good squad. They are a very good squad, and then they go right after that to UIS. They had their two toughest series back-to-back, and it was one of those things of where it was probably good for them to an extent, and I talked with Al Reddy about it. It's probably good that they got that punch in the mouth. They got that, okay, cool, we're not unbeatable. Because they were 11-0. They had never lost a game this year throughout the fall to the spring. They had a bunch of fall games, and they were just rolling, running different lineups, seeing the different guys. So it was really cool. And then since those games have bounced back big, you see the game, probably my favorite game this season, the midweek 11th inning thriller against Ohio Dominican, in which I was the broadcaster and official statistician for half of it at least.
That was a busy day for an official statistician, wasn't it?
Those games are just tiring. Like, you got to think that was a 5-hour game. Mm-hmm. It took us 5 hours to get through 2 contests on Sunday. Or Saturday, excuse me. So, like, it shows you how long that game went, and just going from winning 18-4 and thinking, man, we're probably going to be out of here in 7 to all of a sudden being in the 11th inning and winning on a E4. It's one of those cool moments. But this team is good. And talking with Al Reddy, we have a very interesting schedule coming up. You have Kentucky Wesleyan tomorrow. You have Purdue Northwest on Wednesday. This team's going to start stringing together wins. Splitting with a very good William Jewell squad with a couple very, very good hitters.
Yes,
was a good sign. They're a squad, and that's good for Jewell, by the way. Good for Jewell finally getting the team like that's pumping it, and that team in a year or two is going to be very, very good. Their best player, Alex Epp, their third baseman, he is a dog, just straight up dog. But back to the UIndy baseball side of it, that team is good, and 1 through 9 that team can hit. You have Easton Good recently, starting shortstop for UIndy baseball. He's caught fire recently, and his speed, not only on the base paths, but just out of the box, is some of the best in the conference, in my opinion, best in the country. Obviously, I'm not seeing every game, but he is really good. And then you have Drew Donaldson, and the wise words of Alex Vela. He's pretty good at baseball. He currently is top 5 in a lot of statistical categories when it comes to hitting in the conference, batting .450, launched his 4th homer. You have home run threats in Jared Budosh. And Brady Ware, of course, he hits a ton of them, and when he hits them, when Budosh and Ware hit them, they go. So it's really cool to see how this team has developed, and then pitching-wise, they've found their groove with their 4 guys. You have Seth Spencer, and talking with Al Reddy, he loves his left-handed pitchers, especially starters. You have Dewey, lefty, Brady, lefty. You have, I probably should say Brandon DeWitt, our starting center fielder, who's a two-way guy just like Brady Ware. He's a crafty lefty. You have the crafty lefty in Brady Ware, but then you have your hard-throwing lefty in Seth Spencer, who can, on a good warm day, get up towards 97, 96. He has some gas in him, and he's able to go deep into games. I've looked at him, and I've compared him to your Scherzers, your Verlanders that are able to go 7, 8, and Spencer doesn't quit, and that's a lot of what these pitchers do. And then you have Logan Peterson, who in his last start did get roughed up a little bit against Drury, but he's been very good for the squad. Started the year out, back-to-back starts under a 1 ERA. So he has glimpses of being a very solid piece in this Greyhounds lineup, and he's shown it this year.
Exactly. And the baseball team, we know we've had their ups and downs, but they're definitely looking up. And I take a look around the University of Indianapolis. I look at all the athletes and the swim team, national champions, softball. They're 41-4 right now. You take a look at these athletic programs, you think they just go out and they get it done. What do you think that says about the culture here, namely for athletics at the University of Indianapolis?
Greyhounds like to win. I think that's the kind of thing, and that's like, you look at the scope of college athletics, and not all schools prioritize winning, but that's a big part of what we want to do here at UINDY. And you look at the city of Indianapolis, there's not a college, there's I don't know how many different universities and athletics programs within Indianapolis. UINDY is routinely one of the best athletically. You mentioned the spring itself. Every sport except baseball, I know we're talking baseball today, was atop of the GOVC preseason poll, and baseball wasn't far down the poll. They were 5th, or 6th, excuse me. And so the expectations is to win, and you have men's and women's golf right now battling in the GOVC tournament, GOVC championship. You have women's golf, men's tennis this next week, and they're both favorites. They're the number 1 seed in that tournament, undefeated in conference play. They should pretty easily go through that tournament. Knock on wood. But thank you.
Always.
But it's awesome to see this level of success. And the perfect example is the Directors Cup. For those that don't know D2 athletics, I don't know how much you know about the Directors Cup, but we went from, I think, the mid-20s to after the winter being 4th, which is the overall basically ranking of how your athletics program is doing. So that it's just really cool to see every team just seeing that success, from baseball to softball, women's lacrosse, reigning national champions. Like, nobody's giving them as much attention. They're 6th in the country right now. Men's lacrosse, 6th in the country. Like, there's 4 or 5 teams in this spring that have a chance to make a deep tournament run. And women's lacrosse might be defending their title at Key Stadium. So it's awesome to see all this success.
Well, I appreciate you so much, Jacob. And congratulations. You're at Victory Field. You're on ESPN. You're on SportsCenter. No reason to be humbled there. When we come back, I'll be with Jace Hodge on the desk. We're going to talk some NBA playoffs. This is Last Call.
Hey, it's Giselle here on 88.7 WICR.
88.7 The Diamond, the only jazz and classical station in Indianapolis, completely led by the students of the University of Indianapolis. Listen to us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn app, FM radio, HD radios, or even on our website at wicronline.org, a different kind of public radio.
This is Last Call. Kaden Colford, Jace Hodge next to me in place of Nathaniel Finch today. Like I said earlier, he is off doing Nathaniel Finch things, doing his own thing, making himself a better broadcaster, a better on-air personality, and a better guy overall. But as we fill in for him, it's playoff time in the NBA, and there's no disappointment within these 2 games. We're going to start off with the 76ers and Nets, Jace, and both of these teams look good.
They both do. They definitely both do look good. The Nets, obviously, in that trade earlier this season, trading Kyrie and KD, so neither of them. But the leading player now, Mikal Bridges, how about him? 30 points.
It's so cool to see him come into a team. He got traded from the Suns, right? And it was hard telling exactly what he was going to do or what impact he was going to make. And a lot of people are counting Brooklyn out. But Brooklyn's coming to this, and they look like a ball club. The chemistry is there. And when shots are falling, they're falling. I don't know if they have that superstar to go to, but they're a solid team nonetheless.
But speaking of shots falling, the 76ers, 21 three-pointers made, 49% from outside the arc, and they were just red hot and gave the Nets no chance in this game.
And like I said, the Nets, I don't know if they have that one guy they can go to. 76ers have at least 2 of them, right? You have the guy right here, the big guy, Joel Embiid. He's an MVP candidate for a reason. And you have James Harden, and I don't want to say he fell off, but at one point he was a no-doubt MVP, and you see it right there. It's shots like that, his ability to get open, his ability to knock them down. That makes the 76ers very, very scary.
It does. And then Joel Embiid, he might be the MVP favorite at this point. Another phenomenal game from him. 26 points for him. Harden at 23, Tobias Harris 21. All over the board, the Sixers are just knocking down shots.
And if you're the Nets, on defense, I don't know what you're supposed to do with this team because you cannot guard Joel Embiid one-on-one, and you can't guard James Harden one-on-one, so you put 2 on each. There's going to be 2 guys running around on Philadelphia, and like I mentioned, they didn't really stop him here. 121-101 is the final score. Philadelphia takes this one. They play again tonight. That one is going to be at 7:30. I don't know about you, but I'm expecting another Philadelphia win.
I sure would think so. Philadelphia at home, already up 1-0 against a Nets squad who doesn't look maybe like a playoff team. Granted, they got a lot of those wins earlier on in the season with KD and Kyrie.
So we move on. It's Boston and the Hawks. And the Hawks are one of those play-in teams, right? They come in, and a lot of people have the debate on whether the play-in should be a thing. It increases the eligibility to the 10th seed, right? They play in for that 7 and 8 spot in the playoffs. What do you think about the play-in? Do you think it should be a thing?
I agree with it. I do agree with it. This year, the 7 and 8 both got in. Granted, the 7 and 8 were flip-flopped in the East. The 7 seed was Miami, but they ended up going to 8 now. But I do agree with the plan. I think it gives some smaller teams a better chance to get into playoffs, gain some more recognition from the NBA fans.
And I'm never going to complain about NBA playoff basketball, right? But hey, Boston, they'll take a play-in team, right? They were the top team in the East for much of the season. They come into this one, it was a domination from the get-go. They got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, another matchup nightmare if you're Atlanta.
Oh, for sure. They were up by 30 at halftime. This game was done really early on. The Hawks tried to come back late, but Boston just didn't allow it. Tatum, 25 points, Brown, 29 points, and even Derek White put a really good night, 24 points and 7 rebounds for him.
And it's not to take away from the talent that Atlanta has, right? Trae Young, one of the best shooters, scorers in the league. DeJounte Murray has really come into his own. Bogdanović can get you a bucket when he needs to, but Boston, they play basketball on both sides. Their transition defense is by far the best in the league, I would say. Al Horford in the middle does good for being 47 with bad knees, and you see him right there. He can put up the 3 as well, so you can't complain if you're Brad Stevens or if you're the Boston Celtics. Not
at all. You got to think Boston's got to be one of the favorites to win it all. Them and Milwaukee. Milwaukee now without Giannis. We'll talk about them in a second. But the story of the game for the Hawks, for me, they shot 17% from three-point range, 5 of 29. They just couldn't knock down any of their shots. Just a rough night shooting for them.
Yeah, Trae Young, he's always this very solid player. Like you said, only 17% from 3 for the Hawks. If that goes up, it could be a more competitive game, but for this one, well, let's just say it wasn't. We're going to move on. Knicks and Cavs, 2 teams that can really score the ball. Here's Jalen Brunson, and he may have not got that one to fall, but the Knicks, he had a great night.
And for the Knicks, this was their first game with a fully healthy squad. They had a few injuries towards the end of the season there, but everyone back healthy, and they showed what a fully healthy Knicks team can do going into Cleveland and stealing Game 1.
And another thing about the Knicks, they're young, right? Jalen Brunson, he really made his name known last year in the playoffs. That was with Dallas, and then he signs with New York this year, and he looks like a one option on almost any team in the league. This guy, he puts the ball in the hoop. But how about Donovan Mitchell right there? You saw him skying high, one of the most athletic players in the league. I mean, he's amazing on the other end.
And Mitchell, he's been doing this the whole season. He had that 70-point game earlier this year. He's just been phenomenal the whole year. Another 38-point outing for him, although his squad could not get the win.
On their home court, too. It's one thing to go and win on your home court or win, if the Knicks would win in New York, it's one thing to win there. But to come into Cleveland against a team that's very solid on both sides, you got to remember they have Jared Allen in there, who's one of the best interior defenders in the league. They go in and they take one in Cleveland. That makes things so much easier as you head into games 2, 3, and 4. You bring it home to the Garden, which is probably one of the toughest places to play in the league. That's a scary sight if you're Cleveland.
And this Knicks squad, if they get hot, they can really beat anybody. Jalen Brunson, the way he's playing right now, and Julius Randle as well. This squad, fully healthy, and with their game correct, they can beat anybody. They can get out of this series. They can give even Milwaukee a possible series in round 2.
Jalen Brunson, very versatile. That's what I like about him. Him and his center in there. I mean, when you have a big guy that can dribble the ball like he can and then make his own shot, you have Jalen Brunson at the same time who can do the exact same thing. That's a scary, scary team. But we're going to Sacramento. How about Sacramento? so easy to root for, I have to say.
Oh, definitely easy to root for, especially as a Pacer fan with Sabonis in there doing his thing. And the Warriors were a favorite to win this series, even as the 6th seed. This is the first playoff appearance for the Kings since 2006, and getting a win on that home court. And how about that crowd there in Sacramento, too? Absolutely deafening.
I wish we had the audio on these clips because, like you said, that place explodes every time the Kings put the ball in the basket, and for good reason. They have waited way too long for a good team in Sacramento, and hey, they finally have one. De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Domantas Sabonis in there. This team, so many weapons.
So many, and it was a rough game for both sides here. It was close, back and forth basketball. Right here you see Curry knocking down the three to give the Warriors the lead, but the Kings just had that winning edge that a lot of people didn't think they would have in this playoff, especially against the defending champions, but they came out and proved to the world why they should be the favorite to win this series.
And you see it right here. It's coming down to the wire. If I'm an NBA GM and I want someone with the ball with under a minute, the obvious answer, I think, has to be De'Aaron Fox. He leads the league in clutch points by a very, very large margin, and that's exactly the game plan. When it gets down to crunch time for Sacramento, put the ball in De'Aaron Fox's hand, and he can run an offense.
And De'Aaron Fox, 38 points. And how about Malik Monk? Off the bench, 32 points for him. Him and De'Aaron Fox were just going back and forth with buckets, and it allowed them to beat the defending champions in Game 1.
Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox, important to note that they were teammates at the University of Kentucky. You got to think that bringing that into a pro atmosphere, bringing that into Sacramento, I mean, it just helps the team chemistry, and you see how happy they are here, right? Not just the players, but the entire city of Sacramento. I don't want to say I have a favorite, but I think I have a favorite, Jace. This team is fun to watch.
I think I'm right there with you with Sacramento. I think they have what it takes to make a run in this playoffs, although they are Sacramento Kings. You know, Sacramento Kings not usually ever good, but I think they have what it takes to beat the Warriors and go far in this playoffs.
They got to light the beam that night. We're going to a Los Angeles team. It's the Lakers. They were playing in Memphis against the Grizzlies. You see the King right here. LeBron James, his pregame ritual, and he started this one out strong. It is crazy to think at 38, LeBron James is doing stuff like this. Just take a look.
And it's just unbelievable what he can do, his athleticism at 38, and how he's still almost in the prime of his game right now.
And it's a two-way thing, right, on both sides. I'm getting flashbacks to Game 7 of the 2016 Finals. Blocked by James once again. He amazes me every time he's out on the floor. But the Grizzlies, right, they have their own roster of guys that can do some damage. Ja Morant there, one of the most explosive guards in the league. Even though he's had a shaky season, if you want to call it that, you can never count this guy out.
And then for Ja Morant, he left the game in the fourth quarter with an injury, and he is uncertain to play in Game 2. That could be a huge loss for the Grizzlies as he is their best player. If he's out for the series, this one might be a Lakers win.
And for the Lakers, coming in off a season where they only had a 0.3 chance to make the playoffs at one point. They started off, I think it was 2-10, and in all honesty, they did not look like they deserved to be in the playoffs. Their team chemistry wasn't there. Their play wasn't there. Stats weren't there. Nothing. But it was LeBron James, or Le GM, if you want to call him that, getting things together for the Lakers. And after a couple new acquisitions, Rui Hachimura had a really great game.
Hachimura, 29.6 rebounds, part of those trades they made on the trade deadline day. Great acquisition, phenomenal night.
And it was him and Austin Reeves. And I think it's a good sign for the Lakers that not all of these highlights are just LeBron James and AD, right? You have AR right here pulling up from long range. And, hey, he started to ice the game. Lakers ended this one on a 15-0 run, Jace.
15-0 run. It was 113-112 with a few minutes to go, and they finished that out 15 points in a row to shut down the Grizzlies and their crowd. It was just a tough ending to the game for the Grizzlies. We'll see what they can do in Game 2.
And we see Jaren Jackson trying to pick up the slack, but it's hard to pick up the slack when your point guard has the ball as much as Ja Morant, when he has as much impact as Ja Morant does on any team. From the Lakers to the Grizzlies, we're going to travel to Miami, the Bucks, and the Heat, or I should say to Milwaukee. Heat and Milwaukee. Another game, another injury in this one to Giannis, which is not something you want to see if you're just a basketball fan.
Not at all. Giannis right there, you can see falling hard on his back. He came back later on in the game, but only played 2 minutes, then went right back out and did not return. We'll see if he can play later on in the series, but if he cannot, the Heat have a chance in this one, as you can see, winning Game 1 here.
And if you can't tell from these first couple highlights, this game was gritty. This game was physical all throughout. Both of these teams love to do just that. They love to push the ball down low with their bigs. This time it was Bobby Portis, and on the other end, it's usually Bam Adebayo getting stuff done. But how about Kevin Love? He was a new acquisition for the Heat this year, and he's getting some love on the offensive side.
And this Heat squad is super underrated coming into the playoffs. They were the 7 in the play-in, but lost that first play-in game against the Hawks, which I did not see coming. But this Heat team and Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, you know what he can do. They're going to be a tough out for the Bucks.
Jimmy Butler is just a leader. Every time I watch him play in the playoffs, I think about his final series against LeBron James and AD. That was in the bubble, and I remember him bending over the side of the court. He's exhausted. I mean, you can't say anything, but this guy puts his heart on the line, and he puts everything out there.
And right here you can see Tyler Hero, one of the better players for the Heat. He actually broke his hand, so he will definitely be out for the rest of the series, so a big loss of their own for the Heat.
And we hate to see that, but it cracks me up that he had a broken hand, and his first instinct from the corner was to pull it. Hey, shooters shoot, and winners win. Heat won this one, and I mean, if you're the Heat, you got to like what you're seeing. Obviously, if you're the Bucks, you want Giannis back.
Yeah, if you're the Bucks, you need Giannis back. Without Giannis, this team just didn't look right for the most second half here. They tried to come back late, but the Heat just didn't allow them to, stave them off, and the Heat now have home court advantage up 1-0 in the series.
2 injuries, 2 big injuries. That was Giannis and Tyler Hero out for that one. We're going to the Clippers versus the Suns. Now, I don't think anybody expected the outcome of this one, right? Kevin Durant had not lost with the Suns coming into this game, but the Clippers had something else to say without PG.
Yeah, and they announced before the game that PG would actually be out for the series, a huge loss for the Clippers with only now Kawhi Leonard. And they've had their injury problems over the last few years. This has been a constant for the Clippers in the playoffs, losing either PG or Kawhi or even both like last year. But they came into this game, a chip on their shoulder, and they got it done.
And Kawhi Leonard, he's not a guy that we see a lot during the regular season. I feel like a lot of it's because he doesn't really say a lot. He kind of treats the NBA like a 9-to-5 job. He just goes in, he does his work, he puts the ball in the basket, he goes home, and he comes back the next day just to do it again. But it's stuff like this. I mean, he has a bag on him, and it's scary. And when you have a big man like that cleaning up for you, it makes things a little bit easier. Zubac that time.
Speaking of Zubac, he had 12 points and 15 rebounds, a helpful hand there on the boards for the Clippers.
And the Clippers, or I should say the Suns, a very, very talented team as well with a lot of weapons. If I see Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker all on the same team as a coach, I don't even know what I'm doing. Of course, you have Kevin Durant, the 7-footer with a bag like no other. Can pull it from mid-range, long range. He can drive it. Chris Paul is one of the best point guards to ever play. I have no idea how the Clippers pulled this one out.
And then you have DeAndre Ayton as well, who he is kind of on and off, but when he's on his game, he's one of the better centers in the NBA.
And this one did end up coming into crunch time, and we'll see it here later. It was Russell Westbrook on defense against Devin Booker. And Russell Westbrook went 3 for 19 this game, everybody. 3 for 19. But when it counted, Russell Westbrook got the block, threw it off of a complaining Devin Booker that time, which would ice the game for the Clippers. Russell Westbrook, obviously one of my favorite players. I'm happy to see him get this win.
And Westbrook also went 3 of 19 in a game a few years ago in the playoffs with the Wizards, and they also won that game. So he's now 2 for 0 when he goes 3 for 19.
We've had some awesome games, some close games. This one, not so much. It's the Nuggets and Timberwolves this time in Denver. Jokic and Cat, that was a big matchup this time. And Jokic, watching him play is so funny because you just see a guy who looks like he's a little bit overweight just going to town on these guys.
And he might be an MVP once again this season, one of the last 2 years, and he's just so dominant down there in the paint. Didn't have as much of a scoring night as he usually does, only 13 points, but still 14 rebounds and 6 assists to go to his name. He's just consistently getting stats.
Well, I mean, this game wasn't the best game, to say the least. Cat did his thing. Jokic did his thing. And as we start to wrap it up, the playoffs look like they're going to be a lot of fun. Michael Porter Jr. that time. We're wrapping things up, right? The playoffs, so much fun to be on with you, Jace. We missed Nathaniel Finch, but he'll be back soon, and he'll bring back his knowledge from Las Vegas. Maybe a little bit more than sports knowledge, but it's going to be great knowledge nonetheless. So much fun with you, Jace. Thank you to Jacob Walton for coming on for an interview. We're going to have a blast next week on Last Call with Nathaniel Finch.